This is a story about moments. One might say we add meaning to the time we perceive by calling it a moment. So by calling it a moment, time becomes a vessel for experience. How we refer back to and explain the experience we had during a specific time determines the emotional connotation we attach to that moment, and where it belongs in the string of moments we call our memories. These in turn define how we explain ourselves and the world around us, and are the root to our personal sense of reality. A story, on the other hand, is the description, either true or imagined, of a connected series of events, or moments if you will. Therefore, an argument could be made that stories and reality have the same origin, simply because they can only exist through the explanation of moments. 4 years ago, during one of those moments, a graphic designer and a music producer were about to go on tour for the first time when they decided to create their first bigger body of work. Welcome to a moment in time. We go back to when we were young. The year is 1996, and it's the 31st of December. It's 11:50 p.m., and Mom just woke you up to watch the fireworks together. As you walk through the upstairs hallway, you see faint flashes of colored light seeping in through the windows. You look outside to see fireworks in the distance made by people who started celebrating early. Your sleepiness makes way for excitement. 1997 is going to be awesome. You're going to school for the first time, and you're turning 5. You go downstairs and enter the living room. The TV is on while Dad pours champagne. You get a glass of apple juice with sparkling water, and you almost feel like you're one of the grown-ups. Suddenly, a Big 10 appears on the television screen, and everyone starts counting down. You're a lot older now, 17 to be exact. It's a hot summer day and the sun is about to set. You think about all the things that happened in the last 2 weeks while you admire the evening sky. How can you ever forget that one sunrise you both witnessed? Did we really kiss? Slightly in disbelief, your reminiscent dream continues when you hear the announcer calling your train. It's about to depart from a different platform, so you have to run. Got too distracted, I guess. You quickly say goodbye to all your new friends, but the most important one is nowhere to be seen. A bit disappointed because of this, and because you never got any contact information, you still start running to the other platform to get on the train back home. Out of breath and exhausted, you take a seat in your cabin. You made it. But you don't really care because you are beating yourself up. Why didn't I ask how to stay in touch? But when the train starts moving, it hits you. Maybe it's better that we don't know how to contact each other, because that way this beautiful memory stays preserved. Maybe the versions of us outside of summer camp are not even compatible. And do I really want to find out? While the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the horizon, your mind starts wandering off. Your self-depreciative frown slowly turns into a grateful smile as you recall all these treasures you've gained. Last year was intense. You worked so hard to get here that you almost forgot what it feels like to live without stress. But today is different. Only one more exam and it's summer break. However, you're still highly focused because you can't afford to fail this class. There is still a little bit of time left when you write down the last answers for the test, so you decide to read through all of them again and check if you made any mistakes. Everything seems to be in order, so you hand it in. Still a little time left. You sit back down and can't help but think about the answers you just wrote down. Really have to pass this one. Did I skip any steps in explaining my answers? Doubt and anxiety are looming in the back of your mind while you exit the classroom. The outside weather is beautiful, however, and you start walking the usual route home. You pass the park close to your house and notice some kids playing. They don't seem to have a care in the world. And that's when you were overwhelmed by a sudden feeling of relief. You did everything you could have done. Summer break just started, and the sun is out. So with every step you take, you leave a little care behind. It's 4 p.m., just 2 more hours before you can go home. Your eyes are fixated on the clock like you're watching a show on Netflix, but it doesn't really seem to help pass the time quicker. You reluctantly do some more work, but it's hard to stay focused. The only reason you have this job is to pay the bills, and you would quit in an instant if there was something better. But for now, it has to do. As the minutes go by, you feel the freedom getting closer and closer. 6 p.m. Salvation is here. You pack up your stuff faster than your co-workers can say, "See you tomorrow," and you get out of there. While sitting on a train, you realize how tired you are. But it really doesn't matter, because you're going home. And that's the only place you want to be right now. The hallway is empty. You're eating a sandwich while sitting on a large pelican case. The taste doesn't really register though, because your mind is still trying to process what happened an hour ago. It's way more quiet down here than it was up in the air just now. You can still hear the engines of the plane roaring. The adrenaline-induced anticipation leading up to the jump was nothing compared to those few seconds of freefall. It was like nothing else you've ever experienced before. When the parachute deployed, the only thing that was breaking the silence was the sound of you yelling in excitement. But from the moment you landed until now, you haven't said a word other than mumbling that you're okay and that you need a second to process. So here we are, last bite of the sandwich. Still a bit dazed by it all. Life seems to have slowed down a lot. But you're proud. You finally showed yourself that you're less scared than you thought you were. So while you walk back to your friends, you realize that from now on, nothing will feel the same. Many years have passed, but it just isn't the same anymore. You and your partner have been talking about a divorce for a while now, but because of your 4-year-old, the conversation is quite complex. It's New Year's Eve, and you're both on the couch watching stand-up on television. Although it's hilarious, the room stays silent. Neither of you is really paying attention to what Eddie Murphy is saying. Instead, you both silently recall the chain of events that led up to this moment. It's been 15 years together, of which 7 years married. You are part of each other's history. So even if the last 2 years didn't produce good memories, the years prior to that definitely make up for it. During those years, you evolved and grew together, and as a result, you created something that you both love more than anything. Thank you. You're surprised of what comes out of your mouth. You look at each other, and for a moment, a vaguely familiar remnant of your love is tangible in the room before it slips away again. You look at your watch, 11:45. Your heart fills up with melancholy when you realize that this is probably going to be the last time that the three of you go watch the fireworks together. But that thought makes this moment only more beautiful. So a slightly confused but happy tear escapes the corner of your eye as you walk up the stairs to wake her up. As humans, we have an interesting relationship with the concept of choice. On one end, we idolize the idea of free will and proudly refer to it in culture as the defining aspect of being human. But on the other hand, it seems as if choices frighten us because they inherently imply change to occur. And because we are pretty good at creating and protecting our comfort zones, change often seems to be an unwelcome guest. Apart from that, it seems like choosing for something doesn't always correspond with the desired outcome. Some might argue that this is partly because of the growing complexity of our society. We have to go through many hoops and get permission from a lot of people and systems in order to bring our choices to fruition. Therefore, it leaves a lot up to chance, which is a pretty counterintuitive parameter in relation to choice. But one thing is certain. We will encounter a lot of crossroads on our path. But the tricky part is that they are often disguised as just a straight road until you reach a T-junction. Somewhere, already far away from their comfort zones, two guys reached a long stretch of seemingly straight road. And while they were looking for the hidden crossroads, they created their second bigger body of work. Welcome to the choices we face. The time has come. School wants you to specialize in a subject, and therefore you have to make up your mind and know what you want to be. You enroll in a bunch of orientation classes, and some of them are actually pretty fun, but none of them click. None of them give you the feeling like, yeah, this is what I'm meant to be doing. As the school year progresses, the pivotal moment of you making a final decision gets closer, and something that should feel inspiring feels like a burden raising your stress levels. Why can't it be as easy as when you were young? That time when you just knew what you wanted to be when you grew up. But this was all before you got exposed to the supposed rules of being a grown-up. Some of them necessary, others not so much. All woven together into a fiber we call society. The question is though, how far can these rules bend to your will, and how can you achieve those seemingly impossible dreams? You know it won't be by just concerning yourself with the choices that school provides you with, because that would mean making concessions when it comes to your life path. Instead, you try to remember what it felt like to know what you want to be, like you knew when you were young. You sat in front of the TV and saw someone doing something on there that sparked a dream, for instance. And although the dream itself doesn't really apply or matter to you anymore, you still know what it feels like to have one. So while you compare all your interests to each other and measure the feeling they give you, you feel grateful for the kid you once were. Because that kid taught you how to dream, which you will never forget. Finally, you can leave that sleepy town you grew up in and have your own place close to the city. It feels like a well-deserved fresh start. No more ridiculous rules from your parents, no more annoying popular kids at school, no more feeling misunderstood. Because you can create your own rules and social environment now. But this doesn't necessarily mean that things will automatically go your way from here on out. You have a lot of experience in what you don't want your environment to be like, but not so much in what you do prefer. Therefore, the potential of this clean slate feels a bit overwhelming, because if you don't act on it, time will choose for you, and you know all too well what that feels like. So in order to make new friends, you realize that a lot is dependent on how you carry yourself and what persona you choose to show to the outside world. So, you start putting yourself out there. You introduce yourself to your new neighbors, have some drinks with coworkers, and look for initiatives from people with similar interests. You try to find common ground primarily in your strengths instead of your weaknesses, because you are done playing the victim in your story and you want friends you can grow with. But at the same time, you just don't want to be alone. Laying it out like this doesn't really help you getting rid of that overwhelming feeling. It seems like a lot of work. But one thing is very clear to you. Authenticity is the name of the game. Because if you are okay with just being yourself around others, they are inclined to do the same. And if some of them don't, or don't seem to appreciate that from you, you will just move on and leave them be. Some people say you are who you surround yourself with, but you know that that is a two-way street. Are you really doing this? For a moment, your cursor hovers over the confirmation button. You and your friends impulsively decided to do this only 2 days ago. And even though you've been fantasizing about it for years, you've just been too scared to actually do it on your own before. Screw it. You click the button and get an email confirmation only 2 seconds later. It feels unreal. You just booked a flight to Tokyo. Excited, you call one of your friends to tell the big news. And the anticipation only amplifies when you list all the things you want to do out there. You have to start packing your suitcase soon, however, because this weekend is coming up fast. Holy moly, this weekend already. Isn't that too fast and impulsive, actually? Nah. You pull yourself together with the realization that those thoughts are mostly emanating from irrational and easily debunkable fears. And although you don't even know what's going to happen, the chances are very slim that this trip will turn into a full-blown nightmare. So, reassured, you carry on with your preparations. And packing your bag has never been this fun before. You've had it. It's like your parents don't want you to be happy. At least, that's what it feels like right now. You're not really thinking straight as you furiously drive away on your bike. Fuck this, I'm never going home. Your thoughts are a broken record. If only there was something big and worthy enough to take it out on. Blinded by rage, you didn't even notice that you've left your neighborhood when you get to the forest next to it. The sun just went under, and there are not a lot of streetlights on this dirt road. As you start to come to your senses, the angry voice in your head makes way for a calm observer. The sporadically placed lanterns give a gloomy demeanor to the trees surrounding them. Apart from that, it's pitch black. Just when you start wondering where you are actually going, a crossroads becomes visible in the distance. Normally, you would be pretty creeped out by all this. It's quiet and desolate, and the streetlights have this weird green hue to them. But the circumstances make that bench next to the crossroads seem like a safe haven. You're not scared because your anger made you energized and slightly overconfident in a "don't test me, I'ma fuck you up" kind of way. You start thinking about what your options are. There are not many. It's pretty late and there's not a lot of places where it would make sense for you to be right now. Even this place feels like you're not supposed to be here. But it does have another quality to it. This feels like one of the back rooms. Liminal space, reality's own purgatory. Time seems to move differently here. Pretty fascinated by this, you decide to linger for a bit longer when you notice how neutral, calm and almost apathetic your inner world is. Your own reality feels distant, which gives you the opportunity to look at it from afar. It's different from when you've lived through it, because now you have a better understanding of how the altercation with your parents came about and what your role was in getting there. After a while, only one option seems to be the most reasonable. So you pick up your bike and cycle in the direction you came from. How on earth did you get here? You know that you've been partying a lot lately, but the last few days feel even more blurry than you're used to. The mirror you are looking at is dirty and full of stickers of bands and brands you don't know. And it's hard to fully recognize your own face because it's distorted and you don't remember yourself looking this tired before. Your friends don't seem to be affected by the amount of partying, right? Well, now you're thinking about it. You do remember one of them talking about wanting to drink less, and another one made a remark of blacking out more often lately. But that sounded more like jokes at the time, right? How are my friends and I actually doing? And to what extent is the relationship that we have built on getting fucked up together? But more importantly, what's left of our friendship if we tone down the partying? It feels like you're stuck here. In the mirror, you see someone falling on their way out of a bathroom stall, looking like a zombie. Damn. Is that what I looked like to others as well? You try to push these thoughts to a far corner of your mind when you walk out of the bathroom and get back to your friends. The next round of shots is on you. The sun is just about to come up when you walk out of your front door. It's still a bit chilly, but you actually love it. Which is a little weird considering you used to hate waking up early. But then again, you used to hate a lot of stuff that you love right now. For instance, you would have never thought that going for a run in the morning would benefit you in all the ways that it does. And the romanticized idea you had about living chaotically and impulsively got a lot more nuanced lately. Mainly because you are now also embracing the idea of routine in your life. A concept which almost felt impossible to maintain before, but now you've put your mind to it, it seems to become easier with every day. Thinking back to when you started this shift in mentality, you feel grateful for that moment of clarity in the restrooms a while back. The reflection of yourself shook you to your core. So after that night, you decided to choose for a different reflection. It wasn't easy, especially the first few days. But after a week, you already noticed so much progress in the way you felt physically and mentally that the hard moments were more than worth it. It's funny how your personal sense of reality can make you blind for what's outside of it, if you're not actively exploring its borders. This room has history. Your father used to develop pictures here before you were even born. You've seen them. He pretty much captured most of his life since he started his career as a hobby photographer. As a kid, you used to find it fascinating to look at those pictures of your dad's youth. Every time he showed them to you, he extensively talked about the adventures he encountered while taking them. But there is one thing he often said that makes more sense to you now than it did at the time. Don't forget that these pictures only captured the good moments. The bad moments I captured in here, he said while pointing at his temple. They are both equally important to remember, because together they tell me the story of who I am, just like your story will be told through the experiences you will have. And don't forget, your story is your treasure. This sounded like gibberish for the kid you were back then. But after you've had your fair share of good and bad moments while growing up, you started to understand the extent of what it meant to you. The more bad moments you've encountered, the more experience you will have in powering through the shit life throws at you. And the more good moments you cherish, the easier it is to come up with more reasons to live. Your story anchors you within your reality, and the way you tell it to yourself determines the momentum and direction of where the story will take you. So if you don't forget where you came from, it will be easier to see where you're going. So while you recall these things your father taught you, you try to come up with a way to explain it to your son as you go through the family photo book together. At first it was great. Going to sleep whenever you want, waking up whenever you want. It was like an everlasting school vacation. But that's just it. It wasn't a vacation at all. Before you had your own place, it was mandatory but also just really easy to follow the routine your parents had. But ever since you live alone, the concept of routine seems to have slipped away entirely. You moved out right after you graduated, so the first couple of weeks mainly consisted of partying and playing video games. But the more time went by, the more responsibilities came knocking. You can safely say you've had the full college student bachelor lifestyle experience, but you also realize that you've put your dreams and goals on hold because of that. It's time. You really want to get your shit together. But it seems like you lack the knowledge and tools to effectively rake up all the pieces. Damn. Finding the right tools and systems to turn into self-conditioned routines in order to reach your dreams feels like climbing Mount Everest. This isn't strange, however, because you pretty much conditioned yourself in the opposite direction since you've left your parents' house. So there is a long road ahead of you. You notice, and the voice in the back of your head that hates you for it slowly starts creeping to the front line. But this doesn't stop you in trying. You try all kinds of planning systems, to-do lists and timer techniques, but you always seem to fail maintaining them for longer than a couple of days. And every time you find yourself slacking off, that voice in your head gets more and more aggressive and hateful towards yourself. But there is something different about this specific morning. You forgot to close your blinds last night, so you wake up from the sunlight on your face. It seems to be a beautiful day, and for some reason this morning has a more gentle vibe to it than you're used to. When you start thinking about the day in front of you, you notice that the self-deprecative voice is less top of mind than the days prior. You look through your room from the comfort of your bed for a little while longer, and you start wondering about the implications of your self-deprecation. Could that be a big part of the problem? How can you set your heart on reaching your goals if you dislike the person that's supposed to get there? So you decide that today will be about trying your best without being too hard on yourself. You get out of bed, start to make some coffee while you play some music over your speakers, when you notice that it's been a long time since you enjoyed the smell of brewing coffee this much. The future is mostly imaginary. The only ways we can approach it is through the relationship between cause and effect from a scientific perspective and through our own imagination. Apart from that, the future doesn't really exist because we can only perceive the present moment. Throughout the history of humankind and throughout all paradigms of thought, we have tried to get better acquainted with the future by making predictions. When we try to predict our own future, we often speak in terms of what's going to happen to us. So therefore, we can safely assume that by using the word predict, we imply that we are in the passenger seat of that specific scenario. A promise is also a form of prediction, in the sense that it also concerns itself with something that hasn't happened yet. But there is a very big difference between the two. Because a promise is a determination to reach a specific point in the future, and getting there is fully dependent on your actions and choices. In this case, we approach the future in terms of what's going to happen because of us. A big part of how we perceive our own future is codified in the language we use to explain ourselves, which often happens subconsciously. Whether you are a passive observer or an active participant is fully up to you. A couple of friends were driving through America in a Sprinter van when two of them were figuring out how they were going to participate in creating their future while they created their third bigger body of work. Welcome to A Promise Is Made. Before you knew that Santa Claus didn't exist, you never used the words, "I believe in Santa." No, you just knew. Like you knew that pizza was your favorite food and there was no reason for you to suspect otherwise. It was only after you found out that he wasn't real that you started using the word believe in that context. But you only used it when talking about other people, like, Timmy still believes in Santa Claus. But what is the difference between knowing and believing? Because you used to be just like Timmy, you were lied to as well. You took those lies as proof for it to be real without even knowing that you needed proof for that. You're thinking about all this because you were just reading an article with the title, "The 16 Best Things Elon Musk Believes." And you started wondering about what belief actually is or what it could be. Could we make a distinction between different types of belief? Intrigued by these thoughts and questions, you decide to write some of them down in your notebook in an effort to crack this mind puzzle you set up for yourself. With pen and paper, you try to remember the article you just read about Elon Musk while you write down the words propellant belief. Your thoughts move on, and you find yourself thinking about lies and self-perception as you write down the words subconscious belief. What else? Well, yeah, there is the obvious one of religion, but by putting religion in its own category, it kind of feels like it's not showing the whole picture. Because in the end, how different is religious belief from believing in scientific facts if you've been nowhere close to the research itself or its concluding documentation? You've never seen an actual water molecule with your own eyes, but you still believe them to exist, for instance. So after you pondered a little bit more on what the common denominator could be between things like religion, science, politics, media, marketing, and pretty much all paradigms of thought, you write down the words systemic belief. You sit back in your chair and just gaze at your desk for a while. That idea of propellant belief got stuck in your head. Suddenly you pick up your pen again and start writing one last sentence. Would it be possible for us to view the concept of belief differently and start using it as a tool to amplify our progress? You're looking at the screen with departure times to see where your train will depart from. There it is, platform 3. You start walking. You buy a sandwich at a kiosk on the way because you didn't have any breakfast yet. It's still early, but it's already buzzing with people who are going to work. As you reach the platform, you notice that you almost hear no voices, even though the platform is packed. You look around and realize that literally everyone around you is looking at their phone. As you move through the crowd, it slightly reminds you of that scene in the Silent Hill movie with the nurses in the hallway. The train will be there in 9 minutes, so more than enough time to eat your sandwich. While you look around at all these people with their heads bent down, you wonder what would happen if you just yelled for less than a second and then also looked around in confusion like everyone else probably would. Shall I just do it? Everyone, including you, looks around in confusion, just like expected. But it's hard not to laugh out loud. You crack yourself up sometimes. You try to remember when the last time was you had a spontaneous conversation with a stranger, but it must have been a while ago. Five more minutes. God, you're bored. You reach into your pocket and get out your phone. You're easily overwhelmed lately. All the stuff that seems to be going on in the world right now is getting you pretty stressed in your daily life. And every time you open social media, you see posts about the coronavirus, politicians slandering each other, and all kinds of conspiracies and social injustices. And you know that your feed is only scratching the surface. Even though you participate in a lot of the debate and try to play your part in creating awareness for issues, it leaves you often exhausted, with cortisol levels going through the roof. This can be healthy, you think while eating a sandwich for lunch at work. You try to come up with a solution. Maybe it's a good idea to be more aware of how often you expose yourself to and interact with social media in general. While this is going through your mind, you realize that you're still scrolling on your feed. You feel the urge to throw your phone in a corner, but saner heads prevail. You lay it down on the table instead, and you close your eyes as you try to enjoy every last bit of that sandwich. You haven't seen each other for quite some time now. You were very close in high school, but after you graduated, life kinda happened and you both went your separate ways. But today you are in a reminiscent mood and thinking back to your high school years. So you decide to look up on Facebook what's been happening in the life of your friend from the past. When you get to his profile, you are instantly taken aback by the posts on there. They are mostly reposts from people trying to prove that the earth is flat. You're flabbergasted. Surely you're looking at the wrong profile. No, there's a picture and everything. He has a beard now and gained a bit of weight, but apart from that, he still looks the same. How is this possible? This is so far from what you thought he would be into these days. What happened? You're having trouble to understand it, and it only gets worse when you start to scroll down. This is his reality. And there are so many people commenting on his posts in agreement that it kinda starts to scare you a little bit. He seems to have hermetically sealed his reality bubble because you don't see any actual debate going on about these ideas. Just a we versus them mentality all the way through. Whoa. Pretty intrigued, however. You start wondering about how many other rabbit holes, echo chambers, and reality bubbles are out there. Because all these people over here seem to exist completely parallel from the rest of society. This thought actually makes you a bit worried. Because how can we collectively progress as a species if we don't seem to speak each other's language no more? This reminds you of a story you heard a couple times when you were young. The biblical story of building the Tower of Babel. A building meant to reach the heavens, but never got finished because people weren't able to work together anymore, because they didn't speak each other's language. The city got you tired. This was the place where it all was supposed to happen. The fast pace of living, the amount of cool initiatives and interesting people to connect with made it seem like opportunities were in arm's reach. But it turned out you were not alone in thinking this. It is a city, after all. Pretty soon you started noticing how competitive this environment really was. It was exhausting. And on top of that, you got bombarded by all kinds of sounds, smells, lights, and other impulses as soon as you walked out of your front door. But you're not necessarily complaining though. And it's not that you don't enjoy it here, you actually love it. It's just an awful lot to process. So you've decided that it's time to get back in touch with this other world called silence for a little bit. But the police sirens and general street noises require you to do that somewhere else. You know that there is a pretty big forest only 3 hours away by car. So you pack a tent and some camping gear and you just go. You love stories. You read a lot of books, browse Reddit pretty often, and love to fully immerse yourself in video games. You remember how deeply invested you were in a game like Skyrim, for instance. You played through the whole storyline at first, but you also remember when you tried to use its exploits for the first time. It was fun, because it still felt like a quest when you decided to make an extremely overpowered Daedric armor set through the Fortify smithing exploit. You started feeling like One Punch Man, because you even defeated Elduin in one hit. The immersion was completely gone, and the game soon got a bit boring and frustrating because of it. So you stopped playing after a while. This is going through your mind while you're wondering to what extent you are still immersed in actual reality. The more often you hear lies getting exposed while getting bombarded with words like fake news in the media, the more you lose touch with the knowledge of things to be true. It seems like nothing is real anymore lately. And looking at all the stuff that people post online, it seems like you're not the only one who is experiencing this. The amount of opinions flying around uncontrollably on our digital landscape in an effort to hang on to our last bit of perceived truth also seem to inflate the actual value of opinion in itself, however. Because who cares what you think? Everyone seems to mostly care about what they think themselves these days. Trying to navigate this landscape feels like traveling through someone else's dream, because interacting with it often seems to only make it more confusing. You find yourself feeling really small in comparison to all this. It's like you see a big celestial body on a collision course with Earth, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Whoa. That sounded depressing, you think to yourself. But you notice that you don't really feel depressed. You just feel tired and weirded out because of all this. But then you start to think about the Skyrim exploits again. Because now that the pillars of immersion in your personal sense of reality seem to be crumbling, you wonder if there could be any exploits to be found in your mind's perception of reality itself. So you pick up a notebook and start writing down all the cheat codes to your game. It's a classy waiting room you're sitting in, which is fitting for the prestige of the company it belongs to. There's marble on the floor and the ceilings are high up. You're getting more nervous by the minute as you see people going in and out of the same room where you are expected in 30 minutes. Did all these people apply for this job as well? Their clothes look so much more expensive than yours, you notice. If only you'd been able to afford more than going to the discount store. Just 10 more minutes. You feel yourself getting nauseous. No, not now, please. You get up to go to the bathroom to freshen up. After a splash of water in your face, You look at yourself in the mirror and notice how different you look from what you're used to. You look actually really good for your standards, almost like a total different person. And while you think that, you get an idea. What if you just go in there as yourself, but you borrow all the courage from the person in this suit? So as you glance at the mirror for one last time before you leave the bathroom, the person in the great-looking suit winks at you. So you crack a smile and wink back. You're getting tired of the rules. Ethically, you agree with a lot of them, but sometimes you like to flirt with the idea of breaking all of them. You fantasize about the kind of shortcuts you would take to get what you want, and also about how seemingly easy it would be to fix all your financial issues. But even though it seems like a lot of people with this mentality are thriving, looking at things like unethical choices of big corporations and manipulative marketing personas of some of the big vloggers and influencers preying on their young viewer base, for instance. Because just like playing a game with cheat codes by yourself, it's only fun for a while, and will often ruin the immersion and enjoyment of the game itself in the long run. Apart from that, you've seen enough prison documentaries to know that you definitely don't want to end up there. And you've also never heard a story where manipulation and paranoia didn't go hand in hand. So yeah, the call of the void to breaking rules for personal gain doesn't really strike you as a good idea to act on. But you do have to admit that it is interesting to think about how the founders of the countries we live in now were often seen as the outlaws of the power systems prior to it. Yes, you know today is going to be one of those days. You can feel it. It's a chilly but sunny day during spring. There is still a lot to do on the project you're working on, but you feel like today could turn out pretty productive. You go through your morning routines while listening to the radio when this one track you don't know comes on. Whew, yeah, this settles it. You open Shazam to find the title and add it straight to your work mode playlist. After you made a cup of tea, you get behind your desk and start your working day while this new song you found is still on repeat. You feel great, but also grateful for the fact that there's music out there with which you can amplify your intentions for the day. You've been staring at your screen for more than 10 minutes now, and while you look at the blinking text cursor on your blank page, you think to yourself that the blink rate must be around 130 BPM? That's how far distracted you got from actually writing the stories you wanted to write. Which isn't strange looking at how sleep-deprived and stressed you are because of the deadline that's closing in. You snap out of it though, and decide to get another refill of coffee from downstairs before you continue. When you get back at your desk, however, another doubtful voice enters your mind. What on earth are you actually doing? You're a musician, not a writer. Maybe people will think this is really stupid, and you're definitely crazy for doing this. And on top of that, how on earth are you going to get this done in time? It's Friday now, and it's all supposed to go live on Monday, and there's still a lot to be done. You're about to start procrastinating because it's hard to cope with the stress. But no, not this time. Not this time. You firmly pull yourself together and affirm the reasons for doing this to yourself. The whole point is to create a whole new perspective on all the work you've created. The fourth perspective, with the first two being the music and the visuals. This is the last piece that still needs to be uploaded because the rest is already out there. And you really believe in the things you've written down so far. So you just need to keep going and finish this thing. And who cares if some people don't like it? You do. And you would if you saw someone else doing this. So, determined and holding on to the last bit of courage you've got, you put your hands on the keyboard again and start typing out this text. So much has happened in your life lately. Your relationship ended abruptly, so you had to move out. And as a temporary solution, you're going to live with your parents again for a little while. You've put most of your belongings in storage and took only the essentials on your trip to your parents' house. They live on the other side of the country, however, so it's going to be a long drive, and it feels pretty heavy to make the trip by yourself. But you power through and try to keep your mind occupied by listening to the radio. A couple of hours pass by like this, and you're halfway along your journey when suddenly that one song you both loved starts playing on the radio. It breaks you. You park your car on the side of the road and sit there for a minute while tears run down your face. When the song is finished, you decide to turn off the radio for a little while. But after about 30 minutes of sitting in silence, it feels like all the other emotions have drained away and only a sense of numbness is left behind. You can't really imagine yourself being able to continue driving right now. You can't really imagine yourself doing anything for that matter. Another 30 minutes pass by like this, when you're slowly becoming aware of your surroundings. You're the only one on this road, and you haven't seen another car pass by for quite some time. Next to the road are fields filled with flowers. You already noticed them before, but didn't really pay attention to them. You pull yourself together and get out of the car to get some fresh air. You walk towards the field, but as soon as you reach the edge of it, your legs just keep walking. Whoa, it's really pretty out here. As you walk in between the flowers, you reach out your arm alongside you and feel the soft petals gently stroking across the palm of your hand. It comforts you. The slight breeze sounds like the flowers are whispering something to you. But you can't make out what they're trying to say. You sit down on a small rock formation nearby and close your eyes in an effort to decipher the message of these flowers. For a moment, all your worries and emotions feel very distant. You're just here, and there is no context needed. After a while, you don't really know how much time has passed, but the sun is about to go under, and when the immersion in this flower world gets broken by the sound of a car passing by on the road behind you. You start looking in the direction where you were headed before, and driving on feels like a possibility again. You get up, walk back to your car, and carry on with your journey, because you believe you will get there eventually.